Don would start off when he saw you being Don Rickles, but he couldn't maintain it. Like he would say, why do I have to do this Mickey Mouse interview with you? Or he'd say, you must be Jewish. Your nose, is that a nose or is it a Zeppelin? That kind of stuff.
Hi, guys. We are back with David Fantle and Tom Johnson, the writers of Hollywood Heyday, 75 interviews with the Golden Age legends. And boy, you're not kidding. Charlton Heston, Bob Hope, Lucille Ball, everybody. You guys absolutely nailed these interviews. So one of them in the book is kind of caught Larry in my eye is Don Rickles. We loved Don Rickles all the way until his 90th year in life, right? And you guys got the chance to meet with him. And I understand, Tom, you got nailed by him in a comedy show.
Yeah.
Tell us about Don.
Yeah, Don, he was just, he was a tank. He was insane. He was like a Sherman tank on stage. And I saw him, I was in the audience with a friend of mine who wasn't Dave at this point, but I was in Vegas. We were at the Desert Inn, and this friend of mine was sort of a high roller. So we got like second row seats at the floor show in the Desert Inn. It was Don Rickles. So, it was just this great thing to see him. And I was really decked out in a double-breasted suit, pinstripe, great tie. I mean, just, even for me, I looked good. I mean, it was amazing. So, he's on there and how he picks people out of the audience. He just, he's like a shotgun. He just scattershots everybody. And he picked me out and he said like, oh my God, you must be Italian. Nothing matches. Which I'm like, no one could see me because they were mostly behind me. They were dying laughing. I'm going, A, I'm about as Italian as a Swedish meatball. And B, everything matches. I mean, it was incredible. He flamed and burned on that, but it didn't matter because it was Rickles, and no one saw me. They just heard him, so they immediately responded. And it was funny because he just got on this Japanese guy in the audience, was ripping the hell out of him about, I probably killed your dad, and like all of this stuff. And Rickles was in World War II. So, but at the end, I hung around a little bit later and I saw him, send a bottle of champagne to that table. And the Japanese guy was dying. He loved it. So, but that was the thing about Rickles too,
And I had a few visits with him when he was performing at a Indian casino here in Milwaukee, and through his publicist,
Tony O.
was able to get, Tony O is a manager, and then Paul Schefren was his publicist. Yeah. But anyways, Don would start off when he saw you being Don Rickles, but he couldn't maintain it. Like he would say, why do I have to do this Mickey Mouse interview with you? Or he'd say, you must be Jewish. Your nose, is that a nose or is it a Zeppelin? That kind of stuff. And if you listen to his Hello Dummy CD from the late 60s, I mean, it's no holds barred. I mean, some of the stuff that he did, of course, would probably 60 years now, get him canceled. Yeah. And I was able, like Tom, to see him at the Sahara at one of the last dinner shows in Las Vegas when it was no holds barred. It didn't matter if you were Polish or African American or Jewish or Italian. He was equal opportunity. But the thing that's different about Don Rickles and today's comedians, when today's late night comedians rip people, they're ripping people because they don't like you. You know what I mean? It could be a politician. If they like you, they don't rip you. But if they don't like you, they rip you. Rickles wasn't like that. His insult humor came from a place of affection and love, and we're all in this together. And as I saw Don back in sort of his heyday many years ago, and then I saw him at age 88 in Milwaukee, and I must tell you, it was actually sad because at that point he could no longer walk. He came in a wheelchair. He got on the stage in a wheelchair, he really could volley off a few of his lines, but half of the show was him staring at a screen showing clips of him and his famous friends throughout the years, which must have been emotionally hard because he had outlived them all.
Right.
And so it sort of ended on this sad note. But again, he was totally original. He was very spontaneous. And as he always said, he wasn't a stand-up comedian with, jokes and punchlines. He was just, totally loose. He called it as he saw it. And he was really a great improv insult humorist.
And so when you guys were interviewing him, were you expecting to be pummeled, or did you know that he had a gentler side?
Yeah, I knew that he turned a switch on and could be Don Rickles. But that wasn't Don Rickles. Don Rickles was a father, a grandfather, a family man. And again, there was no malice in any of his humor, anyone he poked fun at. One of the great YouTube videos is out there is when he performed at Ronald Reagan's inaugural. I don't know if it was the first or the second.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, talk about take no prisoners. That was his style. He was high energy. He would sweat like a pig. He was insane. But you sat down with him in the dressing room, and he would have a cocktail, and he would have his a bathrobe on, a silk bathrobe, and his tuxedo underneath. And he was just Mr. Warmth was in reality a pretty warm gentleman.
And he also had the same wife for his entire life, and he got married late. He was faithful to his wife. He and Don Rickles and Bob Newhart and his wife, they'd all vacation together. I mean, he was just he was very, very different from what you saw on stage. He was really a pussycat.
It's interesting because a lot of the people that you talk to in here, whether it was Bob Hope or Charlton Heston or Don Rickles, they all had really long marriages. Makes you wonder if that's kind of what kept them alive. And they all were people who looked to the future, not to the past. They didn't mind talking about the past, but they didn't want to dwell on it like what you said in one of the earlier podcasts about Bob Hope not wanting to be called a legend because legends are dead. And so I think that's an interesting lesson for the menopause man that we cater to.
Well, kind of an interesting thing, sidebar about Bob Hope was one of the last times I think I ever saw him, or maybe anyone ever saw him. He used to go to Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake, and he'd be there at like 2 a.m.
Know it well.
Yeah, and he'd be there at 2 a.m. eating an ice cream sundae with his driver in one of the booths. And there'd be no one in there, maybe a couple of vagrants, some insomniacs like he was. And he was in his 90s then. I mean, really, really, really. But he was approachable. And same with Dean Martin. He'd go to the Hamburger Hamlet in West Hollywood. That's not something else now. But he would go, I think, every Thursday. He'd sit at a booth, and people could come up. It was like autograph day. They could come up with anything, for Dean to sign. And he'd say, hey, Pally, okay, and he'd whatever. And I mean, but they were both sort of lonely, maybe in a sad way, but also it was, like you said, Larry, just that sort of internal engine that kept them going for however long it did. Even when they were sort of semi-solitary on a given night, they would be out there and, not just sequestered.
One other story that I didn't know, that what I read in your book about Don Rickles, though, is how he met and became good friends with Frank Sinatra.
Well, yeah, he was, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but yeah, I mean, he was at a club, he was performing Rickles at a nightclub, and Frank was in the audience, and I can't remember the exact story, but he basically had the gumption to, make some crazy insult, and, that sort of endeared him to Frank.
Yeah.
And, him and Frank were friends from the late 50s until Sinatra passed away.
Yeah.
I think it was something like, oh, I see Frank Sinatra in the audience. Make yourself comfortable. Get up and hit somebody.
Right.
Yeah. And it was like, and Sinatra, which could have been either way, you don't know, but he gambled right. And, and it was great. And he was on, the Tonight Show with Sinatra all the time.
Yeah.
Doing his whole whole Biddy Boom Bots thing and kissing his ring, and you know, it was just Sinatra loved him, loved him.
Yeah.
Well, anyways,
Great.
those stories and more are in Hollywood Heyday. It's available on Amazon. It's an amazing book with nice little vignettes about a lot of the celebrities that you know and remember. So go to Amazon.com, get it. And guys, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you soon to do another one.
Thank you.
Thank you.